We've been playing a lot of RPGs lately, and we've also had a chance to see more in terms of action commands. That ever popular hit the button or you're dead style of gameplay. But I've been finding myself just not enjoying this. And it brings me to today's critical thought, talking about the challenge of making repeatable actions feel good in the player's hands, and why more is not necessarily better in this respect. Action commands have been a way of trying to add a little bit more spice and kick to RPGs and JRPGs over the years, from the likes of Super Mario RPG to Undertale, Ikenfell, Keylocker, and many, many other titles. And the idea of trying to add more player interaction to combat, it's supposed to be trying to give the player more engagement in the game. You can't just sit back and watch, guy over here do this, guy over here do that, and things just happen all on their own. Now it's, okay, you're going to do the attack, we got to wait for the animation, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. Okay, here, hit the button, and you win. Or it's, okay, now you got to wait for the enemy to do like this, okay, hit defend or you're dead. Or the enemy gets some kind of super elaborate action command. So now you have to spin plates while keeping ping pong balls in the air to get an attack off. Or the enemy does his attack in the form of a Guitar Hero, a note line. And if you don't hit every single button right, you're going to take 700% more damage for each miss hit. And again, the point of this is trying to make things more engaging. But you see, here is the trap about repeatable actions in games. Repeatable actions are boring, and they feel like nails on a chalkboard times 50 while listening to elevator music and screaming babies in the background when it's being done again and again without any kind of sense of progression or goal. And you see, when you talk about progression in this respect, it's about removing or mitigating the annoyance. And if you wonder if I have any experience with that, how many cookies have I clicked? How many orbs have I pondered? And how many heroes I've idled over the years? And idle design and even logistics design are good counterpoints to this discussion. In those games, the repeatable actions are supposed to be annoying to do. Anyone who's played a game like Factorio, Dyson Sphere, and so on knows that you don't want to be manually inserting ore into a refiner or manually mining that stone, copper, iron, whatever. You want to automate that. You want the entire screen to be filled with machines and conveyor belts and sorters and pushers and anything else doing all that work for you. That is the reward. But when you look at stuff like action commands and these kinds of repeatable actions, they're not making things faster. They're slowing things down. So that in a traditional JRPG, combat is oftentimes very fast, very speedy, maybe 3 to 10 seconds if your party is going to just completely dominate the enemy. Now it slows down to maybe 20 to 40 seconds, maybe even a minute for a standard encounter. And again, if we're talking about something that is only supposed to happen one time, this is one epic boss, one epic encounter, okay, that's not bad. But when it's random encounters, and it's every few seconds you get into another fight that takes 40 seconds to 2 minutes long to do, you're just kind of killing the player's will to engage in this game. Another example would be when we played Chris Tales. This was an RPG where you had this entire system of kind of rewinding or sending an enemy into the future and changing their state. It's really cool. It's really interesting. But again, it slows it down so much. And like I said, this is not something that is supposed to be a one-off. This is something that's happening constantly. And this is a very easy trap of over-designing a game for any indie developer. That if there's an action or something that the player's going to be doing constantly, it's going to be drilled into their head that they're going to be doing it. You want to make that fast. You want to make that easy to do because, again, the player is here to experience the game. And if the experience is to get to that far distant sword or get that next piece of story, and you're telling the player, okay, every random encounter takes 2 to 3 minutes long to do, you're going to drive them away. And now here's the point we have to bring this up, because someone's going to comment. What if you turn off or allow the player to disable action commands? This is a very popular approachability and accessibility option. See, this again gets at the problem when you rely on this. If the player has to go into a menu to fix something that is annoying the core experience of your game, then your core experience is flawed. And it gets again at another very important aspect. If you want the player to do something, it's better to reward them for doing it rather than punishing them for not doing it. When I look at a lot of action commands in games, that if I do it, it's maybe 150%, 200% more damage, but it still takes multiple turns to kill the enemy. If you're building your entire game on action commands, they should be very punchy. That if I get that timing, that should be a one-hit kill on a normal enemy. You want to reward the player for doing something. When we were playing Keylock, or what they did is as you go up in difficulty or go up or down, it doesn't change the timings for the action commands. It just affects the rewards and the punishments for doing them. So on the highest difficulty, even if you get a perfect command to block, you still take damage. That does not feel right, in my opinion, because now you're punishing the player, in essence, for playing the game right. So another good example of kind of reversing this is when we checked out Metaphor. Now, Metaphor is your standard Atlas press turn JRPG. You're supposed to be planning, having the right skills, the right archetypes / classes to deal with the enemies. But the game rewards you for learning its systems and for being fast. So, if you beat an enemy encounter without taking any damage, you get double rewards. When your level is higher than the enemy to a certain point, you don't even need to do the turn-based combat. And you see, here's what makes that work. It removes and lessens that feeling of how slow a random encounter is. You want to be fast. You want each battle to be over as quickly as possible because you're rewarded for that. And you're rewarded in a way that's meaningful, aka experience and the archetype currency. But when we play other RPGs, the reward for doing an action command is, well, you don't die fast. Okay, wow, that's great. It's still slowing down combat. And this again gets at the point that we've talked about in previous videos about design. What is the purpose or what is the motivation of your gameplay, of your systems? If I'm here to get into some really great combat that feels fast and snappy and exciting, I want to spend 30 minutes reorganizing my inventory and making sure all my guns are polished and that all the bullets have been properly sanded down before I start playing. Now, if that is the purpose of the game, that is supposed to be a very number crunchy, very slow, very much I'm only going to shoot one bullet, but that bullet is going to be so amazing, that's a different story. But you don't want to fix what isn't broken. And if someone is playing your game to experience a story, then the story should be at the forefront. If someone's here to get into combat, then combat needs to matter. And what that means is that it shouldn't be about random encounters. If you're going to make every fight this, seat of your pants, oh my god, if I miss one turn, I'm dead kind of style of combat, then I shouldn't be doing random encounters. I won't have to take 3 steps and then get into a 10-minute long fight. And it's oftentimes why we see developers, again, go for having a fixed number of encounters in a game versus random. Because they know these encounters can be annoying. But if you tell the player there's only at most 50 fights, 100 fights in my game, that feels a little bit better versus, okay, you can have infinite fights, and they're all slow and they're all annoying to do. a lot of people are just going to say no. And as I said with my Eichenfeld example, that the only reason I managed to beat that game was I just turned on auto win about, I think it was like 35 to 50% of the way done in the game. And you may again say, well, that is the advantage of having these accessibility or approachability options. But you see a lot of people disagree with that. And the game lost a lot of those players before they even got past the first chapter of the game. But again, if anything is annoying in your game, if it's frustrating them to do, and it's something that has to be repeated constantly throughout your game, most people are going to check out and they're not going to come back. Even if you do, again, have that option 2 to 3 menus deep that turns that off or makes it easier to do, a lot of people are going to be saying, nope, and I'm gone. So, to wrap things up for our critical thought, again, slowing things down only works if you make that exciting or interesting to do. If we're going with keeping with the action command theme, again, if I do an action command, I should be rewarded for that. Give me bonus experience, bonus loot, maybe even disable random encounters for like a few minutes. It can't just be, I'm going to slow things down, and your only reward is, well, you just get to play the game normally, but slower. It doesn't work like that. And again, this is the kind of stuff that drives people away from a game, especially if it's an indie game. If I'm used to an RPG or a shooter or a strategy game being very quick, very snappy, and you say, well, all that stuff you enjoyed, now it takes 50 times slower to do, people aren't going to be interested in that. And again, if you want to make things feel very slow, make them feel very deliberate to do, there has to be a counterweight to that. When we talk about games like a Hunt Showdown, or that I think it was called Redeemer, like this was an older FPS, where you're not supposed to be taking a Gatling gun and shooting every single enemy. It's supposed to be very deliberate, getting that one bullet to shoot that enemy. But if I get that one bullet and hit that enemy, it's oftentimes going to be a kill. If it wasn't a kill, and if I just spent the last minute and a half preparing that shot, and I get the enemy right in the head, and all he does is go, ow. Or he goes, like that, I'm going to turn that game off and never play it again. Because again, if you want to motivate someone to do something, to engage with something in your game, you want to reward them for doing it, not punish them for not doing it. So, for those of you watching this, here's my big question for today's video. Can you think of good examples of games that took something that is very slow, very annoying to do, and sped it up to make it enjoyable? And conversely, can you think of a game that took something that was fast or even just normal paced and slowed it down, but still made it exciting to do? Because if you can take something that takes a minute of preparation and planning, and the player is still excited to do it, then you may have something very interesting to play. Because again, no one wants to spend 5 to 10 minutes waiting around to do something, and then it misses. Or it only does 50% damage, and then you gotta wait for the enemy to do that. And can you, as a one final bonus question, can you think of a game that turned something into just a nightmare to do? That it's no longer just a straight line from here to here. Now you have to go all the way around just to do one basic thing, and how annoying that was. So, with that said, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about everything, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching, and a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. If you enjoyed the video, do the YouTubing stuff, be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon, and you're interested in more in my thoughts on design, check out my game design books.